Alright, hello. So we just got hit with the Shrine of the Eidolon update and a bunch of hotfixes afterwards, and with that came about 100 weapon changes and a bunch of warframe changes. In this video I'm just going to go over the primary weapons, at least the ones I own, of the list that they did touch up. I probably own maybe 60 or 70% of them. I'm going to go through and show you what they can do when they're fully polarized, which most of them are, I believe. For weapons that have better variants, like the Bratton, like I'll be showing off the Bratton Prime, but I don't own the regular Bratton. Similarly for the Burston and the Burston Prime, and any other weapons with set variants. So yeah, that's what I'll be doing. I'll be doing it against sortie level enemies. Show you Ember's build just so you know there's no corrosive projection on there. And I'll show you each weapon build that I'm using as I go along. Arcoplasma, bit of fire rate, bit of reload speed, just because I like it that way. I've got a list on my other screen of all the changes that have happened to each weapon, and I'll read through those as I go through them all. To level 100, we'll turn that on so I'm not dodging around. And the only change the plasma I got was a magazine size increase from 6 to 8. Which is not really a big change, but it's worth noting. There's also a recent nerf where it can't actually trigger headshot damage anymore, which is a real shame. I actually feel like it's done quite a bit to hurt the weapon. So you're dealing the same damage regardless of where it hits. Really much point aiming it anymore. Used to be really good for room clearing with headshots down a corridor. 10 guys all in the head at once. Bit of a shame. Very cool weapon. Love the aesthetic, love the reload. There you go. That's what happens. What else we got? I think Attica's next. Pretty generic build, you could probably swap Shred for something else. I'm personally a fan of the Zouge more than this. Oh, see how it performs. Quite well. It's got corrosive and these guys are weak to corrosive, but some solid headshot damage coming out. A lot of crits, a lot of status procs. Obviously not as good on the Bombardier with the alloy armor. A while to strip through it. But quite a reload as well. Bomb's alright, I guess. And it changes that, got critical damage increase from a 2x multiplier to a 3x multiplier base. The damage is decreased from 125 to 80. Interesting. The Basel, which is a weapon I didn't expect to get upgraded, it went from 2.8 multiplier to a 3. That is my generic build. Hunter munitions, focusing on viral, target scoping there as well to proc that a bit more. It's a very crit heavy weapon, obviously. That was alright. Not bad. I think it's the only real submachine gun in the game, but it's a lot of fun. Quite like that weapon. Bratton Prime. This has got a ribbon. It's probably not going to be super comprehensive in that, or super fair, I guess, in that a lot of weapons do have ribbons, and I'm not going to make new builds or compromise my current ones to change that out. Also a bit of shred in there. The status chance went from 20% to 26% at base. The critical chance got an extra 2%, so it's at 12 from 10. And finally, the ammo capacity increased to 600. You can see down the bottom there, so much more ammo. That's been the one thing that I've always hated about this weapon, and we finally had that upgraded. I've always loved this weapon. I think that's probably my favourite assault rifle in the game. Looks good, sounds good, performs pretty well. Very well at the levels you'll be using it. Next up is what is next? Boar Prime. So I've just gone through and roughly alphabetized the list on the website. 4 Prime got a damage increase from 23 to 40 per pellet. It's my generic build, focusing corrosive because I want to strip that armor. Multi-shot and status, there's enough status there to replace two 60-60s and still keep it at 100% before multi-shot. Or even the multi-shot on that. This is probably thematically my favourite shotgun. I've always really liked it, but the damage never really held it up, even with that Riven. But now, I believe it's pretty powerful. It strips armor in about 4 shots. And you can see it's clearing through them pretty quickly. I'll do that again, we'll see how many shots it did take to strip. I did it in 3 that time. 3 again. 3. And obviously it's automatic. A little bit slow, but automatic nonetheless. Very good shotgun, very powerful now. Get over the top, I think. Auto Prime. Don't have much of a build going on here. But it got an increase in status from 10% to 32%, and the critical chance went from 5 to 12, although the damage got decreased from 55 to 46. Bit of an interesting list there. I'm going to go with corrosive, and we'll chuck crit on there as well. A multi-shot, that will weigh the procs more to corrosive. Yep, that'll do. This used to be the meta assault rifle. Bit crazy how much of a buff it really needed to be competitive again at this level. Compared to all the power creep that we've had since then. Performs really well. Pretty accurate. Flight speed is noticeable. Not too bad though. It's really cool to have this weapon be relevant again. I'll scroll my little screen down a little bit. We'll go to the Bursten Prime. Yep. What are we missing here? I would like to drop in another grip mod, Point Strike. There's not enough room to do that, so I'm going to have to substitute a 90 in there. So get rid of Toxin, and that Toxin. Point Strike. See the crit up the top there. So the Bursten Prime got a status chance increase from 15% to 30%. Critical chance went from 5% to 18%, and critical damage went from 1.5 to 1.8, although the damage was decreased 3 points from 39 to 36. Prime Shred on there. I've always loved the aesthetic of this weapon, the way it performs, and just the sound. I don't know, I've just really liked it. I love the idea of a really fast firing burst weapon. It's not god tier, but it performs quite well. I'm happy to have this weapon be able to hold its own now. Quite good. I got the Buzzlock, I believe. Buzzlock. Onto munitions. Yep, we'll try it like that. Really increased projectile speed for primary and secondary fire, and decreased recoil while aiming. So there's not actually any statistical differences. Noticeably faster. Damage is still alright, it's always been okay. Tag an enemy. That reload. It actually moves crazy fast. I don't know if it's always moved that quick. Yeah, it performs very well. I've always found that weapon to be a bit underrated. Everyone sort of shits on it a little bit, but probably a little bit more than it deserves. Sonus Prime. We got a bit of a Sonus Riven, that's quite over the top. That should be primed cryo rounds, but I haven't formed this weapon enough to do so. Assuming that's a hyphen under there, which it is. Probably because I used to use corrosive and cold. but on weapons with a fairly low status chance. Well, it's got a fairly high status chance, but I think it's spread over all the weapons, all the bolts as well. Anyway, charge speed increased from... I swear they've written that backwards. They've chopped its charge speed in half, so you could probably even drop that. It's down to 0.5 instead of being a whole second. This weapon always felt really clunky because it took a second to knock your next arrow and a second to draw the arrow, so it was a bit odd. Status chance went from 10% to 30%. Reload speed is about 0.4 quicker. Added secondary fire mode that spreads a... well, I better show you that. Works pretty much the way Ivara's bow does. Horizontal. See down in the bottom right, I'm toggling between spreads. Get a vertical. I think that's a really nice quality of life change, because with Ivara I never want to fire like that. It's always just quick shots because that keeps it vertical. And it gets an added innate 50% damage to headshots, which is an interesting change. Not sure if it would be worth putting corrosive on here. Might even try that. We'll test out a few different builds on dubious weapons. We also get hunter munitions. It's performing a lot better than it used to. I never really liked this weapon. But now it's not too bad, I don't think. We'll get that. Costs less. Put corrosive on there. Corrosive and cold, we can get rid of cold. I don't have enough to put hunting munitions in there, which is a bit lame. I'll throw it out in there. See the actual draw speed. I think the Sonos, was that 0.5? Maybe it was always 0.25, I remember. This feels really weird using it at a horizontal spread. I definitely prefer it with the attack speed mod on there. That performs very well. Another bow I was surprised about was the Taiku. I always had kind of mixed feelings for this. Everyone sort of gave it a lot more praise than I thought it deserved. Generic build, viral 100% status. Put that on there. So I had its physical damage changed around a little bit. Charge speed was decreased by 0.75 seconds. Charge can now be held indefinitely, which is something that I really appreciated. The longbows usually would decay and eventually it will just reset. This will do it indefinitely now, just like all the short bows, like the Sonos line. The damage was decreased from 500 to 460. Then you get a slash prot. Very nice. And viral. Performing very well against these guys. I'll swap it over to corrosive and try again and see how it goes. There's a crazy one there. If I can swap it to corrosive. Not sure if I can. Yes, I can. Electricity in there. We go. He's slower on those guys. I got a slash proc, so he's gone. I think overall it is performing better. Just because it does have such a high status chance. And I wasted having viral on there. Go down to the Dara Vandal. Damage increased from 31 to 32, big whoop. Status chance increased from 15% to 30%. It's quite high now. Critical chance 5% to 6%. Well, that's 8%, my bad. 5% to 8%. Reload speed is now a lot shorter. Where's reload? 1.8. Pretty good. They used to be 2.5, 2.37. And it also has a very slight recoil added, which I thought was very interesting, but when you actually test it, bring these guys in. You can see that if I shoot there, aim at that dot, it's moving up by about 1mm. It's pretty much nothing. It's more of a animation change than an actual gameplay change. Like you can see the gun jerking around a little bit, but it doesn't make any difference to your accuracy. I was surprised by how this performs. It's pretty solid. Never really liked the Darrow series, but it's grown on me a little bit because of this change. You can see the reticle moving a little bit, but it's negligible. It really doesn't matter. Next one up is the Dragoon. This weapon's always been really weird to me, and that is a really ugly color scheme that I just noticed. And the only reason I rebuilt this was because everyone was telling me it is objectively the best weapon to use with mags magnetized. And I used it in a video against the hyenas as mag. That was fine, but I never really found it to be particularly special. It's got radiation and cold on there at the moment, which is effective against alloy armor. See that it really doesn't do much against these guys. Much nothing. I don't know if it has shotgun status. It's more of a flak cannon. I'll swap it over to corrosive. See how that performs. Using 90s, yep. Because it can't reach 100%. I don't really know if it needs to or not. That's corrosive and blast because it's got blaze in there. That'll be fine. So I had 6 enemies out there. I mean, it's killing them, but not really great. The spread on the flak is pretty insane. Just an odd weapon. I don't think I'd ever really recommend it unless you're using it with mag, but even mag isn't that amazing. Grab her and just test that real quick. I think my generic build's only got 145 strength. It's not over the top. So I got no corrosive projection on there. And kill those enemies and put them all inside that one bubble. I'm still using corrosive and cold. Yeah, definitely nothing special. Anyway, on with the show. This color scheme and that weapon. Ugh. The clown weapon. The Dread. I suppose I should talk about what the Dragoon actually had changed before I move away from that. Quick shot damage increased from 35 to 40 per pellet. Status chance increased from 10% to 23%. When charged, the projectile speed is faster. Reduce the charge time from 1 second to 0.5 seconds, which is noticeable for sure. That speed is pretty good. Projectile lifetime reduced from 4 seconds to 2 seconds, so cut your range in half, but it doesn't really seem to matter because it's travelling so far. It's bouncing back pretty much to where I am. And the damage of charge shot decreased from 90 to 70 per pellet. So they seem to want you to spam attack more than charge attack. It is a bit interesting. Anyway, onto the Dread. Dread's one of those weird weapons that everyone seems to love, and I just do not like it at all. Low status. The crit's alright. It's had its charged speed decreased. So this is an old build, you don't even really need that, but you can see it's half a second now. Might just throw Argon Scope in there for the lulz. A lot of crit going on. I did see it a moment ago. There we go. Oh, no room. Right, scratch that. Back across. Final acceleration. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Nothing much has changed. It's the same weapon. It fires faster. Like, I love this weapon when I first started. It was always my go-to bow, and I really loved bows in the game, so I used them quite frequently. But yeah, I don't know why, it just sort of fell out of my good books. It's not something that I would ever really use anymore. I don't know if it was because the Raktasonos came out and then that became my favourite bow, or... yeah, I'm not sure. It's still fine, a lot of people love it. I don't really blame them. Maybe I'm building it wrong. I've tried building it in plenty of different ways and it's just never really shone for me, I guess. I like this animation, she's not actually holding it. I don't know if that's mag specific. That's quite cool. So the Ferrex's critical chance was increased from 30% to 32%, and the critical damage increased from 2.5 to 2.8. That's not really a huge buff. Again, we got the Viral because we got the low status, plenty multi-shot, and the crit. Ferrex has always been a pretty good weapon, in my opinion. So sure, a little buff is fine. Not really necessary. It's a bit odd because you can't actually hold the charge like you can with a bow. As soon as that charge is full, the projectile fires. It's fine, just gotta get used to it. This weapon synergizes pretty well with hunter munitions, I believe. I don't know if I can fit that in there to show you. We'll drop that. It's only got 80%, but it's pretty reliable. Oh, that reload speed, that charge rate is noticeable. A few slash procs about 8,000. I'm not one to wait around and watch slash procs kill things, but still pretty good. Put that back in before I forget. I actually thought I had both Gorgons, but I only have the Gorgon Wraith. Status chance was increased from 15% to 21%, critical chance increased from 10% to 15%, critical damage increased from 1.5 to 1.9, the ammo capacity was increased to 900, I'm not sure what it was previously. There's also increased accuracy while aiming. Bit of a hybrid build, it's a bit odd to put crit on a weapon with only 15%. I found it to perform better like that, so I'm going to keep it like that. Never really liked any weapon with a spool up, kind of turns me off, like even the Soma Prime or the Tenora. Like they're really good weapons, but just having that spool. Oh no, punch him off the edge. Some crazy recoil on it. And while sure it's got a decent kill time, you're just going through ammo ridiculously quick. Let me see that dot from here. Big stream. But if you're into it, performs right. Not really my kind of weapon. With the Harpack, it's another one that's had a bit of contention. The secondary fire went from 50 to 100. It's not really a thing you ever use to hurt something. And he charged harpoon damage from 100% to puncture. And that's been split across all IPS, still mainly puncture. Added 17% status chance to the harpoon, 20% critical chance to the harpoon, 2.3 critical multiplier added to the harpoon. Yeah, it's, as I said, it's not really something you use for damage. Status chance increased from 10% to 17% on the overall weapon. Critical damage 2 to 2.3. It's apparently improved primary fire's projectile trail effects. Yeah, it's alright. think we're using corrosive. I didn't even really look at that build, to be honest. Pretty good. I don't know if that's just because they're weak to corrosive or it's stripping armor. Find out on these guys. Bit of both. I don't know if Harpoon's always been instant fire. I thought you had to charge it. Do you? You can't charge it at all. You can see there are damage numbers associated with it now. But not very efficient. Also got a weird fire rate. Like, I can click as fast as possible and it will kill them eventually, but it doesn't have a very good cycle to it. What's going on here? That was me clicking as fast as I could. I don't know, there's a weird timing thing there that if you could click like optimally to match up with that timing, it seems to fire faster. Oh, a bit odd. HEMA. Damage increased from 45 to 47, critical chance increased from 7.5 to 11. It apparently no longer requires or consumes rifle ammo, and the improved projectile trail has better effects. I don't think that last sentence made sense. Anyway, corrosive with heavy weight, bit of viral, bit of cold. I do have a riven on there, let's have a look at that. Damage and multi-shot. It's been a while since I used it, so I don't really remember what the effects look like. It's pretty similar to the Harpack though. And you can see in the bottom right, when I reload it still takes ammunition. I don't know if that change just hasn't gone live or if it's buggy or what's going on. This weapon's always been one of my favourite burst weapons, so... always liked it. And you get health back on headshot. Performs really well. I think that was one of the first weapons that I really focused on getting a riven for. I don't really know if that's true, but I feel like it's true. Go to the Javlock. Again, you got that cool animation. I'm gonna bring Ember in and see if that's... yeah, so it's just with mag. That's interesting. Anyway. Javlock, got hunter munitions in there even with 50%, but we've got Argon Scope to buff that up. Using gas, I don't know why. I don't remember what I was using that for. Alright, because it's got fire inherently, and because the build I'm using, I've only got room for one status mod. I think gas was the most beneficial. Anyway, the damage from direct hits was increased from 185 to 230, and that's from your primary fire, and the reload speed was cut down by 0.3 seconds. Apparently it removed camera shake when you're throwing the spear. I don't really know what that means. That looks the same as it always looked to me. But maybe people that are particularly fond of this weapon will notice the difference. I actually forgot that when that detonates, it needs to reload everything. That's stuck in his toe. Need that. It's not bad, those slash procs are really noticeable. Gas procs doing their thing. Must admit, I have liked the aesthetic and just the feel of this weapon. This was the first spear gun that came out. I think I always preferred it over the Ferox, even though the Ferox probably does perform a little better. Carrot Wraith. Got a very basic weapon. I haven't focused on the crit at all. Now let's see what that can be brought up to. 32%, so it is kind of worth doing. I think the reason I haven't is because I've got these two hyphens here. And if I take those off, I've only got 16 points, which isn't enough to put in both of them. Which is a shame. Let's bring those 90s back. So I think if I was going to re-level this weapon, these would be Vs, and I would do a hybrid. We'll see how it goes like this. Definitely serviceable. But good. And it's just being status based, but it's stripping armor really quick. A decent bit of damage coming from it too. So the damage was increased from 30 to 31. Status went from 15% to 25%, and the crit went from 5% to 13%. So very status heavy, very good. Interesting algorithm that they're using when weapons are getting 1% increases. Anyway, next up is the comb. This is one of those weapons that is pretty good. If you chuck a ribbon on there, it becomes top tier. This is a very old build. Tainted Shell. I think this is the only weapon I've ever used that on. It's not enough for that. Shotgun spaz kind of has to stay, although the fire rate went up from dropping that. Shotgun ammo mutation. It's not really a big deal if you got carrier, but I don't at the moment. Let's see what the crit goes up to. It's only 20%. I don't know if I can get the status all the way up without a ribbon. I do have multi-shot, so unlikely. What am I missing here? Heat. Yeah, 85%. It's a shame. Look at that focus on corrosive. The crit. Not really high enough. I don't know what else I can put in this D slot. Cold, extra status. Cold pulls away from corrosive procs, so it's a bit odd. Bit odd indeed. This was a weapon I polarized when I was a bit less experienced with the game, I think. Anti-munitions is not worth it. Vigilante in there. That's 90% fire rate. Is there anything faster? No. No. Alright. We can use that build anyway. I think I would need to put some more former on there, maybe invest in a ribbon if I really wanted to make the most of it. Fire rate, a bit painful. Punch through is nice though. Yeah, still does really well. This has been one of those weapons that was a bit underrated, I think. Interesting. But the only changes to that was the critical chance went from 10% to 11%, and the critical damage went from 2 to 2.3. It's only a tiny little buff. I would like to try it with a properly corrosive focused build, but I can't fit it at the moment. That may be something I do in the future. We got the Lanka. I don't know why they felt the urge to buff sniper rifles. It's a bit odd. Yeah, that's corrosive. Kind of a viral build. Usually with weapons that have, I think that's a decent status chance, but heavy hitting weapons I usually swap down to viral. And I don't have enough capacity for that. Just gonna swap that in there. Viral and electricity. That pushes everything into corrosive. Maybe we'll just use that. There's a ribbon here that I am actually currently borrowing. Multi-shot and critical chance. High tier. I do want it. The guy that owns it wants to give it to me, but I think that's a bit cheating. This is obviously on first tier zoom. Very powerful. I don't know people that ever actually zoom in on a sniper rifle. If you do that, you're an animal. Lately this has been my go-to weapon for Eidolons. I haven't really tested the Vector's Prime since, because it got a buff as well, which we'll get into. I'm not sure which one performs better. This build I use for the Eidolon. I'm going to chuck viral on here anyway. This with the 90. Even though that breaks it up into viral and electricity. I'm gonna see how that does perform. Body shot. Yeah, not as good. a fair amount. So the quick shot damage went from 150 to 200. I don't know why that would ever matter. Looks like you have to charge it at least a third of the way before you actually do damage. But it's a very short reload, although I do have Vile Exhilaration on there. Very short charge time, sorry. If you're charging a third of the way, you might as well just charge all the way. I don't know, I've never spammed like a bow or a charge weapon like that, so it's good to me. And the projectile speed was increased, so that's a nice little buff. So that was the Lanka. Next one is the Mutilus Cernos, I believe. Got another ribbon on here, critical chance multi-shot. Corrosive based. Problem with this weapon is that in your options, display, I don't even really remember what it's called. It's been a while since I've used it. Do I remember? Not really. Yes, I do. That one. But it's got that cloud effect. The Torrid and the Pox have the same effect, and you just can't see through it. When you turn that off, you can see quite well. It's weird to have to change your graphical settings every time you want to use a weapon. Kind of weapon you don't fire all at the same enemy with. A couple of rounds into the first guy, a couple into the next, just so that those clouds have a chance to strip a bit of armor. I always found this to be an underrated weapon as well. See if I just spam this guy, it will take a bit longer for those procs to kick in and make the damage a ramp. I've always considered this to be one of the better bows in the game. Yet most people don't. What is going on to you? I think I impaled him into his friend, and his friend is out there somewhere. Okay. Yeah, good little weapon. The charge speed was increased, so again, I'm not really showing that, but it's half a second, as most of the bows have been buffed up to half a second. Because of that, you can probably drop this out, although I just really love having that fire rate on there. And the status chance went from 45% to 49%, which, I mean, is fine. Do I have an empty slot? I don't. Although that build's irrelevant. But it reaches out of here 100% status with 2 mods, so I guess if you get a Riven, that's not quite on par. Not quite good enough. Even that doesn't have status. Yeah, I don't really see why that was buffed the way it was. But it's a buff. Moving on. Ogress. This used to be a very meta weapon. Used to be the go-to grenade launcher, or the go-to explosive weapon. Had its charge speed cut in half, I think. It went from 0.8 to 0.3. Apparently the fire rate's increased as well. So we've got viral, blast radiation on there. I got firestorm on there as well. I don't know if I could replace that with anything. The crit is not worth it. You don't want shred on an explosive. I guess you put heavy caliber. Not really a mod I put on anything anymore. I'm just going to leave it as is. I'm a fan of this augment. Just leave it as is and show you how that performs. I definitely miss the old model as well. It used to have like a very boxy aesthetic. Very little against the gunners, so there's no corrosive on there. There is room for corrosive, I'll put that on there and try that as well. Yeah, there is. Most of it's in blast, it's primed, and it's got innate blast, I believe. Because there's more enemies out there than I expected there to be. Yeah, it's alright for clearing trash mobs, as all explosives are. It's quite lacking against these heavy enemies. And the reason I rebuilt and reformatted that weapon was for that challenge that I had issued a long time ago where I had to use Atlas and the Ogress to take out the raptors in a sortie. It was a bit of fun. Bit of a odd one. Panthera was next. Status chance increased from 20 to 24% and critical chance increased from 10% to 12%. That's only on the primary. There is an augment for this weapon, but I'm not using it at the moment. I do have crit on there and I do have status on there, so let's see how that goes. We're forgetting to kill all the excess enemies. Get a few slash procs out of it. I don't think those blades are passing through them even with punch through. Yeah, it's not really a weapon I would ever use to actually kill something. I mean, it's doing alright. Definitely not something I'd take into Sortie 3 with the intention of clearing rooms with it. It does have an augment where you can disarm enemies with the alternate fire. Even the damage of that is not particularly special. And the range is god-awful. Anyway, let's move away from that. I think it's fine. I like it thematically. I prefer how it handles over the Mitre, for instance. The numbers just don't really back it up. Parasist. I haven't used this weapon in a very long time. Damage was increased from 30 to 33, increased accuracy whilst aiming, and decreased recoil while aiming. I don't even have a build on here at the moment. Crit isn't really worth it. 25%? I suppose it is, that's fine. Both on there. So this is very similar to the Harpack, I believe. It's got a... Ah, this one's the one with the charging harpoon, so you have to charge this one to fire it. Sure, it's burst fire. That takes off the armor really quick. Yeah, that's not bad. It's performing a lot better than I was expecting it to. Another one of those weapons that sort of went under the radar. For me, at least. Bring those guys back in. It's taking out 2 level 100s in one clip. The harpoon damage is utterly negligible, even without armor on. Of course, you wouldn't be using it for damage. Just like the Harpack. Yeah, that was definitely performing a lot better than I thought it would. Stop Paris Prime. Scroll my thing down a bit. Generic build. Not sure Argon Scope needs to be in there. We got viral again because we got low status. This clipping through that mod was really confusing me. I thought I had some kind of bug on my monitor. Interesting. So I don't have any fire rate on there, so it's at 0.5, which is part of what was buffed, I believe. So the charged shot damage increased from 200 to 260, and the charge speed was 1 second, and now it's 0.5 seconds. So all the bows seem to be getting cut in half. They seem to realize that having a slow fire rate on a heavy-hitting weapon is not really ideal. So I'm just going to leave it like that. They could put hunting munitions in there. Leave Argon and get some orange crits going on. I'm not seeing much happening. Very, very few procs. Damage is mediocre, I would say. I'm gonna put hunter munitions in place of Argon. Just see if that steps it up a bit. We've got 100%. Crit chance. Destroyed the guy behind him. Flashback's doing 3394. I'm doing 6400 in there. Guy's still flying away in the distance. So it's a bow that definitely appreciates having hunter munitions on there. I don't know, Paris Prime was never a weapon I ever really used, to be honest. Like, it's alright, but I think it's pretty much outperformed by most of the others in its class. Charisma Grakata, damage increased from 11 to 15 and status chance increased from 20 to 21. Okay, we got Argon in there again. Another hybrid weapon. I think the recoil on this thing is a bit insane. Yeah. It just moves everywhere. I'll do it on a wall in a minute so you can actually see that. I'm trying to counter it, but it's a bit difficult. Same right there. That's about your effective range. Same at the bottom. Some pretty solid spread on that weapon. But kills really quickly. If you're into fast firing close range weapons, doesn't get much better. Trying to move into shotguns, I guess. What do we got next? The Quartak. This one's had a bit of a weird history, hasn't it? The damage was increased from 27 to 49. The reload speed was 1.7, it's now 1.0, and the fire rate was decreased. So I think this weapon came out and it had shotgun status and it was crap. Then they buffed it to make it a burst fire weapon. And then they decreased the fire rate. So that's me firing as fast as it will fire, without fire rate mods, clearly. And I think the weapon was very powerful. Its first iteration wasn't as bad as people thought it was. It was then buffed and it became very powerful. Now that they've sort of brought the fire rate back down to be like between those two iterations, it kind of suffers quite a lot. Like, I really liked the weapon as its second iteration, and now it's like, it's fine, it's still doing work, but yeah, it's not like it used to be. But it's still pretty good. It doesn't need to rely on hunter munitions to take out heavies pretty well. Let's see if there's room for a fire rate mod on there. I don't like to drop that. You could drop Argon, but I don't want to either. But I'm going to, just for some rate. Should I put Shred on there? Is that going to be enough? Let's just fire and see what it's like. That's alright, but I think for the sake of argument, what's that? 55, that's 60. I'm going to put Viral on for 90. Vial, sorry. And just see how it performs like that. Like, I kind of feel like the weapon needs fire rate now to perform how I would expect it to. I think I actually prefer it like that. I don't know if that's biased because I really liked the second iteration, or if it's actually performing better. I feel like it's performing better, but not 100% sure. Anyway, we've got the Rubico. Status chance increased from 5% to 12%. Still pretty garbage. Critical chance increased from 25 to 30. Again, I don't know why they felt the need to critically buff sniper rifles. Reload speed was 3 seconds, it's now 2.4, which is great because the Rubico is notorious for having a terrible reload. The damage decreased from 200 to 180. So again, pretty generic build. We've got Viral on there, 75%, so we've got Argon because it feels weird to have snipers that don't crit on every single shot. It's just that base zoom, of course. can definitely tell when I hit the headshots and when I don't. In a bit. With all snipers, if you're... It's a bit weird because if you're using a sniper you want what you're firing at to die immediately, so you don't want to use hunter munitions, but at the same time the weapons that fire like a sniper rifle are the ones that best utilize it. Rubico is probably one of my least favourite snipers, I think. It's kind of always been in the top tier with the Vectus Prime and the Lanka. People are always arguing which one is best. And of the three, Rubico is my least favourite. But it's still fine. That reload buff I think is quite nice. It's 3 seconds. Yeah, that was quite the killer, I think. Secure Penta. Status chance increased from 10 to 26%. Critical chance increased from 10 to 26%. Damage decreased from 375 to 300. And the ammo capacity was decreased from 30 to 28. Why they'll do that last one I'm not really sure. It's Radiation, Cold and Blast. I'm going to swap that. Corrosive. Yes, that. Tether Grenades is kind of the only reason I ever used this weapon, and because it's got such a low capacity cost, not sure what you'd call that. Not really much else you can put in there, like, you know, Argon Scope on a grenade launcher, not really. Heavy Caliber, again, not really a weapon that I like very much, mod that I like very much. Could put Vigilante in there, in place. It's kind of weird, particularly with that, because if you put a few of these down, that's my limit. I've got 7 in a clip, but I can't fire anymore until they detonate. Okay. Just a odd weapon. And it does basically nothing. Can't get headshot bonuses unless, I suppose, you fire to a wall when they walk past it. You can see that they can't move because of that Tether Grenade augment. Yeah, the status isn't really noticeable. The crit is alright, I guess. Again, not really noticeable. It's just always been a kind of meh weapon, and it still is. With a Scourge. There's been another weird one. I think this build is fine. Pure corrosive based, obviously there's no crit. The Scourge damage from direct hits increased from 30 to 70, so it's had it over. That was a very graceful image. Yeah. So it went from 30 to 70, so it's been doubled base damage. Scourge has always been kind of a status applying weapon. You can see it strips armor pretty efficiently. That's really all it can do. It's status and base damage, so that they buffed base damage is a good thing. With 2% crit, you're not going to be critting at all. I don't know, kind of like the aesthetic. I still feel like it's a bit meh. Some fire rate on there because you kind of need it. That's fine. It's a fine weapon. The buff was good. It definitely needed it. But it probably could have used a little bit more. I think having that 2% and just having no capacity for crits really hurts the weapon pretty badly. Snipetron Vandal. Gain Viral, gain Argon because we don't reach that 100%. This is another weapon that I'm not particularly fond of. Because it performs alright. That recoil kind of takes me out of it. Even though it settles back and it's pinpoint accurate. It's just a bit odd. I think the weapon is probably fine, it's just that it doesn't really work for me mechanically. The status chance went from 15 to 16%, big whoop. its critical chance went from 25 to 28. A big whoop. Didn't change too much. Still very serviceable. I've got another weird one, the Sobek. I never really know how to build this weapon. Like, acid shells is great when you're actually playing, but in the simulacrum it's not. Viral and heat, very low status. Kind of feel like you need a reload. It's going to take... This is my config A build, so this is what I would regularly use. Let's kill those, and we're going to cheat a little bit. We'll drop in 4 of those as well, so I can shoot those and spread the damage. I don't know why I pick that energy up all the time. See, that's negligible again, doing anything to these guys. So with the augment and all 4 status, I don't know if it does actually need 4. It can reach 100%. Yeah, it's not great. It's pretty good against infested, as most things are, but because of that acid shells mod, does a bit of extra AoE. But against heavily armored targets, it just doesn't do too great. For this corrosive and blast, this has the shattering justice, which is additive, so you can see 100% there, and that is before multi-shot. Let's move that along and prove it. 100% still. Oh, no, the multi-shot in there. But we'll try that out. That does alright. I remember throwing this build on. I threw this build on earlier, but I didn't actually use it. I forgot these guys were here. It's a bit problematic that you have to have blast because you can't go for headshots anymore because everything's on its ass. Having those corrosive procs reliably going off is definitely better for the weapon. Yeah, definitely performs better like that. Bit of an odd one. But yeah, the status chance went from 15% to 27%, which is why it's 100% viable now. Critical chance went from 10 to 11, and the reload speed went from 4 seconds to 2.7 seconds, which was very noticeable. Very, very noticeable indeed. You get through ammo pretty quick on that thing. An automatic shotgun, even with low fire rate, you still chew through it. Strong Wraith, scroll down a little bit. The damage increased from 30 to 40 per pellet. The critical chance went from 15% to 18%, and the critical damage went from went from a 2x multiplier to a 2.2x multiplier. I don't know why that was so hard to get off, but it sounded a bit odd. This has always been the build that I'm using, so the critical chance went up a tiny bit, but I've always had it on there, so demonstrate that. I don't really know why they felt the need to buff this weapon. They can go because they're irrelevant. Still a very powerful weapon. I also get mixed up between the magazine sizes, so this has 10 shells in a magazine. Or a clip, whatever you call it. Because they don't have clips when you reload like that. Anyway. Yeah, I'm just not really sure why they felt the need to buff this weapon. It's not 100% stripping their armor because they are only level 100. I think it does it in 5 or 6 shots if they can actually survive all the shots. Yeah, it's beyond me why they felt the need to buff it, and I'm pretty sure that has a pretty solid disposition, doesn't it? I don't have shotgun ribbon, so I can't show you. I think it's at least 3. I think it's higher, but I don't want to say that because I don't remember. Super Vandal used to be an awesome weapon. Fell off, power creep, and now it's a pretty good weapon again. So the status chance went from 5% to 30%, which is insanity. The critical chance went from 2.5 to 16, which is now 40 with point strike on there. Critical damage went from 1.5 to 2, which is nice. The projectiles have increased speed, you get more accuracy whilst you're aiming, but the damage was decreased from 45 to 40. I would say for that trade-off, it's definitely worth. It's got a lot of recoil when you initially fire. You can see the accuracy is pretty solid, and the projectile's moving pretty quick. And with that status chance, and a bit of crit on there, you chew through the armor, that's for sure. How many is in a clip? Got 300 in a clip. That's really good. I think that was one of the outliers for me, that I wasn't expecting to perform as well as it does, but it definitely does. Yeah, I like it. Very ammo hungry, but when you're fighting, you know, rooms full of trash mobs and just the occasional heavy, you melt them with a few shots, and then it's really nice to know that when they do come up, you can just bullet hose into them for a little while and they will suffer the consequences. Scroll down a bit more. Next up we got the Tenora. Interesting weapon. This is a mix of both. I don't have Argon Scope because I've got that in there. I'm going to put that in there. Maybe we'll try both. Damage increased from 23 to 24 for both modes. The status chance went from 15 to 16 for the primary fire. The critical chance went from 25 to 28 for the primary fire. Critical chance went from 33 to 34 for the alt fire, and increased the speed to reach max fire rate and accuracy from 25 rounds to 18 rounds. So it takes less time to spool up and reach maximum potential. It is a very solid gun. I think it's got a really cute reload as well. You can see that initial spread all over the place, charges up, it's very accurate. And its alternate fire is basically a semi-automatic. I think it uses 10 rounds to fire. Not really something you use the way I was using it just then. It's kind of like pump these guys with a bit of corrosive. Use it to finish them off. It's also really good with hunter munitions, and I saw someone use a Riven with it, and I think they had viral as well. So if you procced a viral on a level 150 heavy, and then a slash proc with his Riven, it would just one-shot them. It was pretty nice. Yeah. So I'll chuck hunters on there and we'll have a look at how that performs, but I think I would prefer to have Argon Scope on there, to be honest. See if we can proc slash. Swing 5,800. Yeah, that's pretty good. Definitely makes the secondary fire sort of stand on its own, as opposed to requiring a bit of primary fire first. I guess that's all preference. With Tenora, the Tonko is next. Memories. The memories. A Riven on here, critical chance, multi-shot. I think I used to have a couple of Rivens for this weapon. So gotten rid of them. Yeah, so that's radiation and cold. I don't remember what I was using the weapon for last. What is under that? That's a D. That's also a D. I guess radiation. I would like to have viral on here. Or we could put corrosive and cold, which I might just do for the sake of this video. Tonko got increased projectile speed, which I'd say is quite noticeable. Change the projectile life from 3 seconds on launch to 1 second after first bounce. So 1, 2, 3 would usually detonate. Now, 1 second after it bounces, will that come back down? Yes. Yeah. Interesting. I guess it kind of makes sense. If it still detonates on a body, I think that's fine. If I point blank someone and it detonates as it hits them, yeah, that's still alright. Yeah, still performs alright. I'm going to try it with a viral in a moment. This gun used to be top tier. It's still pretty good, I guess, but you know, took a bit of a nerf hammer to the face. See if we can put viral on. I'm gonna have to swap a polarity. Need that. Go there. Probably put Vigilante in, which is not something that existed the last time I used this weapon because it was nerfed. Maximum viral, bit of blast, puncture. Some extra multi going in there. I just feel like it's still serviceable in clearing hordes. It's not particularly useful against heavies anymore. But against heavies, I'm not sure why that bounced off his head. There are things like the Tsar and the Lens that can clear rooms like the Tonko can, but they can also clear heavies like the Tonko used to. Probably better than the Tonko used to. So it's just fallen out of graces in that there are better weapons. It's a shame. Torrid. Increased fire rate by unknown amount. Increased reload speed, so it used to be 3 seconds, it's now 1.7, which is nice because the reload on this weapon was always garbage. The projectiles have increased speed and it improved the projectile trail effects again. So we've got another Riven critical multi-shot, which is kind of my go-to. I think half the Rivens I've shown have had that. Corrosive, high status, bit of crit. The crit on there helps a lot, obviously. Goes back down to 37.5, basically cutting it in half without that Riven. Bit of extra multi-shot. The same thing as the Mutilus Sonos again. You don't really want to stand there just firing at the same guy, you want to sort of spread it around a bit. I think the most notable use I ever had of this was in a Kufa Fortress survival that I did as a Vault. I think the enemies had augmented armor. I don't really remember what the condition was, but firing it through the Vault shield and having all this proc and all this crit was decimating everything, and it was really quite impressive. This weapon's always been quite powerful, I think. And the reload speed is just a really, really nice buff, as well as the projectile speed. It's noticeable for sure. Used to feel like so sluggish. You just have this crazy arc. I don't know. It's always been a good weapon. Still definitely quite a fan of it, unlike the Tonko. Another weapon that a bit confused as to why it was buffed. Yeah, Vectus Prime. Damage increased from 325 to 350, and the critical chance went from 25% to 35%. This is Radiation Cold, and that is because that was my Eidolon hunting build. This is just pure viral. Got a Riven, which is critical chance and damage, plus negative zoom, which I consider to be another positive. We'll test that out. I haven't really decided if the Vectus or the Lenka performs better. I find the Lenka to be more satisfying at the moment. Vectus definitely performs very well. Going a bit closer. That was obviously, or maybe not obviously, but that was only at the first step of a zoom. You can kind of see on the right, it goes from 2.5 to 4.3. It's a really good weapon, very powerful. Yeah, it just, I don't know, baffles me why they buff guns like this and nerf. I'm not going to get into it. I'm not sure how their balancing scheme works, but yeah, 3 out of 5 disposition on one of the best snipers in the game. I guess snipers are a bit underutilized, and Riven's are just based on usage time. Anyway, moving away from that. We got the Tsar, so the status chance was increased from 20 to 29% on both the primary and the alternate fire. Critical chance went from 15 to 17 on both the primary and the alternate fire. There's a lessened effect of gravity on the projectile, and the FX improved projectile trail FX of the bomblets after the initial explosion. It's quite specific. Multi-shot critical chance, and we get an extra round in the magazine, although we do lose a bit of ammo on that Riven. This build is corrosive based obviously, and multi-shot. It's kind of what I will use if there's no frame stripping armor, because it does a pretty good job of doing that itself with all the little bomblets on there. I think as far as launches go, this is one of the better ones, just because it is a hybrid the way it is. I don't think it's something you want to shoot at people. It's usually a shoot on the ground near them, so the bomblets explode and they all hit them. They're all sort of coming back, didn't get anything. Again, it's kind of got the same arc as the Torrid. The Torrid definitely got a better one. This is noticeable as well. It used to have a lot heavier. You know, I have to aim up there to sort of hit around here. Nice little buff. Not sure why they felt it was needed, but yeah, whatever. And you got the Zenith, which is a 500 day login reward. Another Riven, which is multi-shot crit chance, magazine capacity. I don't really like having magazine capacity or reload speed on automatic weapons because I just get very trigger happy and I always run out of ammunition. Corrosive based, got a bit of extra fire rate on there, which makes the weapon feel better, but obviously you run out of ammo a lot quicker. Weapons like this just kind of force me to use carrier, which I don't really do very often anymore. The Zenith just got a 30 to 34% status buff. Very negligible, but we'll show it off anyway. Got a slash box going on. Strips armor pretty well. The main thing about the weapon is its secondary fire, which is not close enough to do it, but it has infinite punch through. Let's bring that back. Send it out a bit closer. I can get it to work. There you go. So this used to be a lot better than it is. These headshots seem to be pretty accurate currently, but it's just crap. Again, I think it's similar to the Tenora in that it's you might strip a bit of armor, put it out, and then utilize it. I think it would be better off on a weapon that inherently strips armor, just because that's such a long process. You'd just be better off spamming them. I suppose if you're on a squishy frame and you need to, you know, really make use of the cover, it's the best weapon to do it with. Okay, last weapon I'm going to show you is the Zouge, my kind of go-to crossbow, because it was nerfed. We don't know if it was intended or not. Multi-shot and toxin on there. So it's only got a 25% crit. I think that used to be 60 or 70%. Or maybe it was only 50, I don't remember. But that is not documented. The only change that they documented with the Zooge was the mastery rank increase. So hopefully they just messed that up somehow and they're gonna revert it. Just, like, it still performs alright, but it seems pretty odd to me that they would nerf it and not put it in the patch notes. Seeing how well that performs, like I could understand if they did nerf it, like that was doing really, really well. But I just hate when they hide that shit from us. If it's a bug, fair enough. The fact that they didn't mention it kind of leads me to believe it is a bug. Because they've, like with Ivara, you know, they change a few cosmetic things and they break how our Artemis bow works. Probably just some kind of weird coding error. I don't really understand how that stuff works. But yes, that is the list. There's a Stradivar which is also buffed, but still working my way through that. There's a few outliers. There was a couple that really performed a lot better than I thought they would, like the Dara and the Super Vandal. And the Parasist, a few others. Kinda, not too bad with fire rate on there. But yes, that's all the primaries that I own. I will do a video shortly when my voice recovers, probably tomorrow. Do the secondaries, maybe the warframes as well. Which order? They'll all go up. God knows how long this video is, I probably won't cut anything out either, so if you've enjoyed slogging through that maybe 40 minutes of testing. Hopefully this helped you decide if you're going to invest a whole bunch of Forma into some of these weapons. But I think overall it's pretty good. I really appreciate that they're going back and actually, you know, bringing things up to par. Like, so many weapons were just MR fodder, and it's really nice to have, like, everything on this list is sort of viable. Like, everything here, if I randomized, I would be pretty happy to take in, maybe with a couple of exceptions. Yeah. Yeah, and I've still got heaps of weapons in the Foundry, and there's a lot of weapons on that list that I would like to try that I haven't yet. Like the Stradivar, a bunch of others. Not that one. Oh yeah. I'll see you later.